Hello everyone and welcome back to another tutorial on our channel. In this one we are going to be taking a look into Quartz library, and we are going to be looking into a specific problem that you might encounter when running multiple, or let's say thousands of Quartz jobs. So the first thing that I would like to talk about is how you can configure Quartz to run in a cluster, and then what are the problems that you might have there if you're having really like thousands and thousands of jobs. So let's say like 50,000 plus jobs, and you still are running in a cluster. Let's say you have multiple instances of your application, you're expecting it to perform really well, but then you notice that your timers are lacking and not firing as they are supposed to. So we'll talk about what the problem is there and how you can actually solve it. As you can see here, I have a small project already set it up. This is a Spring Boot application with Quartz added as a dependency here, and we have few classes here which we are going to be taking a look. So from the dependencies you can see that we have the starter Quartz, starter web, because we have some endpoints, and then also there is a starter JDBC so that we can connect to our database, because we are going to be using the Quartz JDBC store. So we're not going to be using the RAM store, and that's important because as far as I'm aware, the RAM store does not support clustering, so you cannot run the RAM store in a cluster. Besides this, we have a few other classes, so let's have a look at them. We have our Quartz configuration, which is basically just used to build a data source, so nothing special happening here. Besides that one, then we have the controller, which we can use just to schedule a job. You can see here that we are injecting this timer service, and we are providing it with some timer info. If you open up this timer info class, so you can see this is just a record which only has the ID, so it's nothing special here. Here you would add more properties when you're building your timer, so how many times you want it to fire, in which interval, blah blah, but all of this is now hard-coded in this application, so I didn't want to really spend time on doing that. If you're interested in more details how you can do that, there is another tutorial on this channel which I will link down below, and then you can have a look at how you can set this up. But yeah, let's get back to the controller. So in the controller we have the service, as I mentioned, and we are using it to schedule a job. So let's have a look at the service, what we have here. So here we have our scheduler. We are building it here, then initializing it. So basically we just want it to start. And then we have this schedule job method, which basically builds our job details, builds the trigger, and then uses the scheduler to schedule the job. And building the job details basically means getting this job data map, because that's where you store all of your callbacks, which is in our case just this info, and we link it together with the ID. So the ID is important here. And then we have a trigger where we usually would provide all of the information about the timer itself, so how often it will fire and stuff like that. But as I said, this is hard-coded, and yeah, then we just build a trigger. Again, important is the ID itself, so this is so that we can link it to the same timer that we are using. And then once we have the both objects created, then we can schedule our job. So as you can see, our trigger is built in a way that it fires every 3 seconds, and it has a repeat count here 4, but that actually means that it will fire 5 times. So if you look at the documentation of this method here, it will say that it fires whatever number you provided plus 1. So in our case, it will fire 5 times. Okay, then let's look at our actual job. This is just a normal class which implements the job interface, and it has this execute method here overwritten. To it we are providing the context from which we are getting the job details, and then from the job details we are actually getting the timer info. Important to notice here is that the timer info is linked. So the key of in this timer info a callback that we have created together with our timer in this job data map is the key is always the timer job class name. And you can see we have one log, so that will be important, where it says, okay, this job has been executed, blah blah. One other thing that we might add here would be actually on which thread. So let's add that quickly. Then we can say something like thread current thread, and then let's just get the name of the current thread. So why are we getting this is basically just to demonstrate one thing, so how our scheduler works. So depending on your configuration, the scheduler will have a certain amount of threads. I think by default it's 10 threads, but you can increase that, decrease, and then here when we run our job, we'll be able to see on which thread it's firing. So let's quickly start our application and see what we have here. Let's see what shows up. You can see here that we have a few things initialized, blah blah, and then we have the important stuff. So we have our Quartz Scheduler with the name scheduler initialized, and you can see that the job store which is being used is the data source job store. We have the 10 threads, so by default, and our scheduler is clustered. Basically what this all means with clustering is that you are able to now run multiple instances of this application in a cluster, and you can then use all of these nodes to execute your jobs. So if you would have like tens of thousands of jobs, then you can have multiple instances of running and then executing those jobs for you. But as I mentioned earlier, you might recognize one thing here, and that's it, that you're only executing around 10 jobs in total. So among all of those instances that you're running, let's say you're running 50 instances, but you're still executing only 10 jobs. And the reason for that is that you have a thread pool with 10 threads, or how much you configure. And the way Quartz works is it actually, when it creates those jobs, so those timers, it uses its own name. So the scheduler will use the name. In our case, that's just scheduler. And it will then be able to only execute jobs, or it will only be able to execute 10 jobs with the scheduler of that certain name. And this will basically slow down everything regardless of how many instances of your application you have. The way you would like to solve this is something that we're going to be doing here, and that's we're going to be introducing multiple schedulers. So I'm going to show you how you can introduce multiple schedulers within a cluster. So let's say we want to introduce, 10 schedulers per application. So if you would have, 2 applications running, each would have 10 schedulers. So in total, you would have 20 schedulers, and each of those 20 schedulers would have 10 threads. So each of the schedulers could execute 10 jobs if they have them. So each job that's created on a scheduler will be executed on the same scheduler. So that's important. You cannot execute a job created with scheduler 1 on a scheduler whatever, 5, doesn't really matter. So you always have to execute it on the same one. And but you're still getting more out of your application, and you're able to execute more. So depending on your jobs, it will not affect your performance at all. So it will actually be much faster. You will not suffer any consequences. Okay, let's actually just start some job with some ID. So let's see how it looks like. You can see here that we have a job executed. This is the timer info that we are logging, and it says it's on scheduler worker 1, 2, 3, 4, and I guess 5. Yeah. So it went through 5 threads and executed this task. So this is what we have. Okay. One more thing that we should look at is the application properties. So how we actually configure this. We also have a data source. So we have our database with the normal, so with all of the tables that you can get. So there is a script on the Quartz website which you can take in and then just create all of those tables. But you can also see this how it's done in the other tutorial I mentioned. I will link it down in the description, then you can have a look. But yeah, this is just the connection to our data source, so nothing special happening here. And we are saying here that Quartz will use this job store, which is listed here. And then these are the interesting properties. So we have the instance name, which is the scheduler. we have the instance ID, which is set to auto, meaning that you will always have unique ID for your instance. So this is important. You cannot run multiple schedulers in a cluster with the same name, so name like this, without having the different instance IDs. You can run it, but you will run into many problems. So you can actually see this in the Quartz documentation, that they say, okay, if you have an instance name, so if you have a scheduler with some instance name and you're using the clustered mode, you must have auto set here. And yeah, so we have the clustered mode, so we set true, so meaning that we are running in a cluster. And that's pretty much it. So now the next thing would be actually to change all of this to enable us to use multiple schedulers. And that's what we're going to do for the rest of the video. Okay, then let's close all of this. Let's go back to our application and let's create a new package. Let's name it factory. And inside of this package, we're going to create a new class and we're going to call it scheduler factory. So this scheduler factory will be used, so it's just a component, it will be a Spring managed bean, and it's going to be used to build the scheduler for us. So we're going to be creating a new public method, which will be returning the scheduler itself. So let's name it, I don't know, build. And to it, we're going to be passing only one parameter, and that will be the scheduler name. So what we are going to be doing is we are going to be creating schedulers with different names. So let's have a string name, whatever. Okay, and for now let's just return null. And that's pretty much it what we want to do here. Okay, so before we can create this scheduler, we need to actually have all of the properties that we have configured. So like this, what I mentioned, this clustered mode, this, I don't know, the instance ID, stuff like that. So you need that. You can also have multiple, you can have different properties here, which you would actually want each of your schedulers to have. The only difference between them will be the name, which you're going to be setting manually. Okay, now what we can do is we can have a look at the Quartz auto configuration class, which has this nice method here. So this is basically how they built the scheduler factory bean, and this scheduler factory bean is what you would use to build the scheduler. So we can actually copy all of this. So let's just go like this, copy it and paste it here. You can see we're missing a few things, and we're going to be going like this. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to inject a few properties. Like the first thing would be the Quartz properties themselves. So let's go private final Quartz properties, and let's name it properties. So that's one thing that we need. The next one would be the customizers. So as you can see here, so we go private final and then object provider, and then the type here would be scheduler factory bean customizer, and we'll name it customizers here. Okay, great. The next thing we need are these job details. So similar as here, we're going to have just job detail, and then let's say job details. Okay, great. Next thing, let's get these calendars. Oops. So let's duplicate this. So we will have the object. Actually, in this case, we'll just have a map. Map string and calendar for Quartz, and it's going to be named calendars. So let's have that one. And then we're going to have object provider here for the trigger. Let's call it triggers, and we need application context also. Yeah, and let's go so, and then let's just create a constructor here with all of these nice properties. let's maybe just make it a bit easier to read. And yeah, I won't go into details what all of these do. So they are actually needed to build the scheduler, but the important one is the properties, because that's basically the stuff that you have configured here. So that's what we are taking in. Okay, but as you can see, we still want to use our name, and we have a missing method here, which is like called as properties. And basically what this method is doing is just setting the source, so this as basically building it as a properties object and then just returning it. So let's create a method here called private static. So let's call it wait, actually it will be returning properties. I'm not sure if it's this one or is there. Let's return this one for now, actually. What is this? Oops. Let's see from where does this come from. Java util. Okay, so it's just Java util properties. Yeah, it's the same one. Okay, and we have to name it as properties. It's going to be taking in this source, which will be the map. I guess string and string. Let's call it source. And it's going to be taking in another value here, which will be our name. So the name of the scheduler itself. So the way we're going to do this is going to create new properties here. Let's name it properties again. Doesn't really matter. At the end, this is what's returned. And what we want to do now is we want to say, okay, okay, let's name this new properties. So it's easier to understand what we're doing. So in these new properties, we're going to be putting all the properties from the source, but we're also going to be in the new properties, we're going to be putting this name. And the way we do this is let's do this. We need the key here, and the key would be basically this, what you have here, but we don't need the Spring part. We only need this one here, so the Quartz Scheduler one. So this will be our key, and you can do this for any property that you have, so it doesn't really matter. So once we have this one, we just need to pass in our name here, and if I'm correct, this should be it for the scheduler factory. So this should build us our scheduler without any problems. Okay, great. Now let's create a new package. Let's call it service, and let's call it scheduler service. So let's auto-wire this. Sorry, not auto-wire. Let's just say this is a service. What we will inject here will be our factory, because this is what we're going to be doing. So private final scheduler factory. Okay, let's add this to the constructor, and that's pretty much it what we need here for now. So what we now need to decide is how many schedulers do we want? So we could start with the hard-coded number. So we'll start with the hard-coded number. We'll say, okay, let's create 10 or 5, doesn't really matter. And what's important later is that you cannot simply just change that number. If you do that, some of your timers might not fire as you expect them to do. The reason for this is actually the way we find the scheduler for timer. So as I said, all of our timers will have some IDs, which is just some string. And the way we'll do this is we're going to take that string, take its hash code, and then get a number out of that hash code by basically just checking, okay, how many timers we have and what's the value of this hash. Once we have that, then we know, okay, we got number 5, meaning use scheduler number 5. But if you change this, so if you increase the total number of schedulers, you would be getting different numbers for those timer IDs. And then it would mean, okay, maybe this timer ID is now scheduler 7. And what I mentioned earlier, you cannot use scheduler 7 to query the timer. Actually, you could actually query it. I'm wrong with that. So you could query the timer, but you could not execute the job on scheduler 7 if it was created on scheduler 5. So that's the important thing. And regarding querying, you can always query everything. Or can you? Actually, I'm wrong. I'm double wrong. You cannot. So if you create a timer or a job on one scheduler, you can only see it and use it on one scheduler. What I meant to say is you can query it if you did not start the schedule. So you saw this in the timer service in the init method. We're starting our scheduler. If we didn't do this, we would not be able to schedule a job, but we would be able to query it and so find it in our database. So yeah, let's build this famous hash method. So how we do this? Let's make it private static. It will be returning an integer, and let's name it hash. And what it will take in is final string timer ID. So this will be our timer ID. And the way we say it is we get the timer ID hash code. So we have our timer ID hash, and then we need to get the, actually let's make this final, and now we need to get the hash value from this, which will be also an integer. So we will take hash value, which is the timer ID hash module, the number of timers. So let's make this a variable here, private final, private static final scheduler count. Let's make it 5. It's actually really hard to type and talk at the same time. But basically what this does, it will always give us the same value for the same hash, as long as this count does not change. So as long as we have the same count here, so if we have 5, we always get, I don't know, for timer ID 1, we'll always get 0, blah, blah. Doesn't really matter. Okay, and once we have that, we return this hash value. So if it's a positive number, we'll just return the hash value. Otherwise, we can go hash value times -1. So basically, we just need an absolute value from this one. Okay, so just make sure it's always positive. Okay, and now once we have our what's it called? Once we have our way of selecting which scheduler we want, we need to create a scheduler. So let's make a post construct method here, void init, and then let's say something, and we will be doing our scheduler count. So we'll start from 0. So we'll have 0 to 4 schedulers. And we're going to be using the, what's it called? The factory to build the schedule. But we also need the name. So we need to build the scheduler name. Let's do it something like this. Private static string build scheduler name, final and let's call it index, and we're going to be just returning something like scheduler, and then on which index it is, then we will have something like scheduler 0, scheduler blah blah. Okay, let's pass this in here and then do this, and now we have our scheduler. Okay, now that we are building these schedulers, we might want to store them somewhere. Let's just do that here in a list, private final list of schedulers. So it will be just an array list with 5 of the capacity, so we can just do it like this. Okay, and then every time we build a scheduler, we just say schedulers, actually, yeah. How we do this? We need a way to find the scheduler for every ID that we have. So when you say, okay, create me, so like if I go to the timer service and I want to schedule a job, now I'm just using the scheduler I have outwired here, but we will need to access the schedule service and say, give me a scheduler to schedule this job. And the way you would do that is from the timer info, you would take the ID, go to the scheduler service, build a hash with this ID. This will give you an index, so it will give you this hash value based on which you should be able to get the schedule. So we might need a map here, which will be mapping an integer to a scheduler. So this will be our new hash map with the scheduler count plus 2. Actually, can I define a load factor here? Yeah, I can. What is this? Okay, I think this should be it, so that it doesn't really overload. So load factor. Yeah, I think that should be it. Or we can just say, I don't know, whatever, 10. Okay, doesn't really matter. And then we say schedulers, and then we are putting our I here and putting the scheduler that we have just built. Okay, great. We also need one more thing, so we can say public void start schedulers. Basically what this does is it will start all the schedulers that we have just created. So we have to iterate through the scheduler values, and so we can rename this one to scheduler and then just go scheduler dot start, and this needs an exception. Okay, and this will be called from the timer service because we are going to be injecting this scheduler service there. Let me see if I missed something. I don't think so. I think everything should be there. Yeah, let's just go to the scheduler or to the timer service and see what we need to change, how we can reconfigure it that it works with this schedule service. Let's get rid of those imports which we don't need. Wait, we did not build a hash. Yeah, the hash will be used once we are getting the scheduler. Yeah, that's what I'm missing. I knew I was missing something. Public scheduler get. We need to be able to get the scheduler, and we need string timer ID. And basically what it does, it will go to our schedulers map and say get hash timer ID. So we will get for any string that we pass in here to this one, we'll get a number going from 0 to 4, and this will be able to get us a scheduler. Okay, let's go to the timer service and let's get rid of this one. So this one was a spring managed bean, so we're getting rid of this one. We don't want to use that, but what we want here is the scheduler service. So this is the scheduler service that we have, and can I just add this to the constructor? I can, and I can get rid of this one and make this one final, and then we just remove this. Okay, great. Now in the scheduler service, we are going to be we can actually do this manually. Yeah, scheduler service and then start schedulers. So we don't need post construct here. So we'll just be going to calling this one from this one, and then we're going to be starting it. And then when we want to schedule our job, we don't have our schedule anymore. So what we will do is say get scheduler, and then from the info, we're going to get the timer ID. And all in all, that should be it. Let's give it a start. So let's rerun this, and then hopefully I can explain you why, but it looks like it doesn't work. So let's see what's the problem. What failed? Bean creation. No scheduler set. Interesting. And where is no scheduler set? Get scheduler. Okay, so it cannot build it. No scheduler set. What does that mean? So I tried to build it, but it failed. Okay, let me have a look at this. Okay, our application is now running. Let me show you what we missed. So in our scheduler factory, when we are building the scheduler bean, we need to call this one. So scheduler factory bean after property set, which basically does some fancy things. Which prepares the scheduler instance that you want to get and all of these things. So in the Spring managed one, this is being called, but we need to call it manually. So we don't. I forgot about this one. Okay, but now that we have done this, we can see that our application has started. I'm not sure if I can see how many schedulers have been initialized. So let's start some jobs, and you can see it's being executed on scheduler 0. And if I change the ID to something else, we might get scheduler 4. Then I change it to something else again, and I am getting scheduler 3 now. So let's have all of the schedulers finished, I think. And if I retry this one, it should again end up on scheduler 3. So when I'm using some ID, it should always end up on the same one. Yeah, you can see scheduler 3, and it's using worker 6, worker 7, blah blah. Okay, if I say ID 1 here, so let's have this one finish. Send it in. Then we have a scheduling job with ID blah blah, and you can see it ends up on scheduler 4. So every time I send this with an 1, it will end up on the scheduler 4 in this bucket. And then if I want to query it, I would always be using the hash method to build it, blah blah. Let's see where we end up with schedule 2. Yeah, we end up on scheduler 0, and you cannot end up on a scheduler that's not there, because that's how our method is built. Okay, great. Then let's quickly recap what we did. What are the most important things in our application? With application properties, we have connection to our data source, and we are defining that we're using the job store JDBC, so we're not using the RAM store. The important here is not this one anymore, because we are doing this a different way now, but the important is the instant ID, that's auto, and that our job store is clustered. That's the important thing. So these two properties are really important for us. Then in the scheduler factory, we are taking in all of these nice things that are needed to build a scheduler. So this is what Quartz is also using. So we're just copying that in, and then we are adding this line here to initialize all of the things, and then we are fetching our schedule. And we are setting an additional property with our instance name from all of our properties to build the scheduler. Okay, once we have our factory done, we have our scheduler service, which injects the mentioned factory. in which we have the initialize method, which will actually create and build all of our schedulers and put them in some map. And then we are going to start all of those schedulers. We could have also started them here and then put them in the map. That would also work. So we would not need an extra method. Didn't really think about that. And then we have also the get scheduler method, which is used from the timer service to actually get the scheduler, and it passes in the timer ID, and we build this hash, which is then from 0 to the scheduler count to get the scheduler. And once we have it, we use it in our timer service. So here, which has the scheduler service injected, which also initializes and starts all of the schedulers. And it has one method which is used to schedule a job. In this job, we get this timer info, which is just containing the scheduler, the timer ID. We build the job details, we build the trigger. All of these things are hard-coded except the ID. And then we use the scheduler service to get the scheduler based on the timer ID, and then we schedule our nice job. And then once it fires, we can see this in the job here, that it logs just this line. So it's always the same. If you're interested more in Quartz, I'll be linking the mentioned tutorial in the description. Then you can have a look at that one, and you could actually extend it to be working like this so that you have multiple schedulers. If you're running really thousands and thousands of jobs, then you would need this. But if you're running only a few hundred of jobs, then definitely one scheduler is more than enough. So you don't need to worry about that. If you increase the thread pool and then you maybe start a few instances, if you're running it clustered, you'll be more than fine. But if you're running a RAM store, so if you're running in memory, you will not be using this, because then it will not work. So this only works if you're running in a cluster. Okay, if there are any questions or something is unclear, please feel free to drop a comment down below, and then I will try to have a look at it. Then I will see you in the next one.